town has a ghost story that's been passed down through the generations. But what if those legends were true? My name is Miranda Young, and I'm the Ghost Biker. Hey everybody, and happy Thursday. Welcome back to the Ghost Biker Garage. I am your host, the Ghost Biker, and tonight, like we've been for the last probably, I would say 6-7 weeks, we are live here in the very haunted, historic Scott County Jail. And I'm so glad to be back. I know we didn't have a show last week because we were traveling to Pennsylvania to the amazing Gettysburg for the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash. And so we were traveling about this time last week, just getting into town. It was quite a long drive from here in East Tennessee, but such a great Paracon. We'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. But like I said, I am so glad to be back with such a great guest tonight. I can't wait to introduce you all to Miss Jessi Ann York here shortly. But just want to say hello to the folks over here in the chat room. Hello to Miss Susan. Thank you so much for coming all the way from East Tennessee up and seeing us there at the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash. It was a great weekend for a great cause. Hello to Miss Peppy Purple Eyes Paranormal Investigations. Hope to see you all out pretty soon. And hello to Mr. Ronnie Anderson from Bedford Paranormal. So, like I said, we had an amazing weekend this past Friday through Sunday in Pennsylvania at the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash. And I just want to take a few minutes, kind of talk a little bit about that. We have put some photos up on the site and got a lot more to go. You know, was up there from Thursday night through Monday, got in very, very late on Monday night, and haven't had the chance to really go in and add all the pictures because I got to see some great things while up there at the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash. And probably the most fun and most important thing was meeting the people that I've known for years through Facebook, through the paranormal, and just not actually being able to meet them in person until this event. And so I've heard nothing but amazing things about this event from the very beginning. So was very honored to not only be able to set up a table, but to also be a presenter at this event. I was able to talk about Ghost Biker explorations as well as the Scott County Jail, and then also our newest venture with the expansion of History, Highways, and Haunts over to Historic Rugby After Dark. But our table here, the picture I'm showing, the historic Scott County Jail sponsored a table. And so I had my Ghost Biker merchandise, we had jail merchandise, and also my business partner, Dr. Christy Sumner with Soul Sisters Paranormal, brought Soul Sisters merch. And so we were able to really spend the weekend letting people know about this great little jail here in East Tennessee. And hopefully some people will come down and investigate from that. Like I said, I also want to, let me get this picture here pulled up right quick. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the very, very lovely Miss Pamela Berry. And so her and Steve, they were the ones that put on this convention. If you go back and watch, I think it was the summer of 2022, we did an episode with Miss Pam Berry, and we talked about the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash. All the proceeds from this does go to charity. It goes to the Pennsylvania Wounded Warrior Fund, as well as the, I forget the exact name. I think it's Heroes for Children, but basically, granting those wishes for children who are unable to get out there and do certain things. We'll get all that information together and make sure we put that out there. But I believe they raised $20,000 at this event, which is it surpassed what they did last year. They raised $18,000 last year. So just a wonderful, wonderful event. of hope and healing, and also getting to meet some great folks for a great charity. And so, as Miss Jenny Davis says, it was so great to meet you. And they were at the table across from us. It was wonderful to meet you as well. As a vendor, it's really kind of challenging to be able to leave your table and get up and go meet folks and talk to everyone. It was such a busy event that we weren't able to get and spend as much time as we wanted to talking to people. So it was wonderful to meet you, Miss Jenny. And I totally agree with you. It was a truly amazing event. And so, like I said, we did get to go and see a lot of interesting sights there. After the event ended, got to go spend sunset in the battlefield, went over to Sachs Bridge, and ate at some wonderful places there in Gettysburg. So hopefully here within the next day or two, we'll get those pictures posted and be able to talk a little bit more about that. Do want to talk about a couple events that we do have coming up. And again, these events, they raise money for some great causes. So the first one that I want to make sure to mention is, let's see here. It's actually coming up on us very, very quickly. It is the Deep South Paracomic-Con, and the funds raised for this does go to the Boys and Girls Club of Ozark, Alabama. And so that event is going to be on August 19th and 20th. And you can go check out more information on this on the Deep South Paracomic-Con Facebook page. Or actually, I'm going to copy this link right here. You can go to deepsouthparacomiccon.com. And let's see, for some reason it didn't allow me to pull that up on the website there. Let me try this. Want to make sure. Yeah. So here we go. deepsouthparacomiccon.com. We've got some of the folks that were there at the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash that will be coming down and speaking at this event. Also, a lot of folks that were there last year. This is the second annual. I was very honored to be a part of the first annual and very excited to be invited back. We've got authors and artists and cosplayers. I mean, it's great. What's really cool about this event is it covers all the different genres of all things high strange. You've got UFOs, you've got cryptids, you've got Bigfoot, paranormal. This is going to be a very fun event that we've got coming up. And again, the money goes to a great cause. So you can get on there, you can get your tickets. There are different levels of tickets on this one. You get them for either the day. They've got different panels, got different speakers. I'm not quite sure what time I'll be speaking yet on this one, but definitely go check that out. And that's August 19th and 20th in Ozark, Alabama. And then, of course, this one, I'm just going to say just a very little bit about this event that's coming up, but it is the first of its kind, and it's going to be the Spirits of Deadwood, and that's going to take place in Deadwood, South Dakota, September 29th and September 30th. And I'm so excited to be able to, go out to basically the Mecca of motorcycles there in Deadwood and Sturgis, South Dakota. So taking and being able to share Ghost Biker explorations with a totally different audience over in the Northwest. And this, I can't say enough about what the funds from this event. It goes to the Sacred Mountain Retreat Center. And we're going to have, I did have Brandon on my show, Brandon Cooper, last year as well. And actually, I believe it was earlier this year I had Brandon on, but we're going to have Brandon. Hope to have the folks from Horn Paranormal, have some of these folks that's going to be involved with this event on the show talking about this. This location, Sacred Mountain does so much for our military veterans as far as, giving service dogs and, creating this special location for them to go and, relax and get the help and, go out on a retreat. There's a lot of things that this location does that we want to have the folks on to really talk about what Sacred Mountain's mission is. And, being able to do a Paracon that that will support this cause is something, our military is something that's very near and dear to me. And so for them to um, be able to do this Paracon and be a part of this is something that I'm very excited about. I'm going to pull up the website right quick here so you can find more information about this. They just released the event information here, and it is sacred. It's on the sacredmountainretreat.org website. And so actually I'm going to copy this link right here onto the page so that you guys can go and check this out for yourself, because basically you get let me kind of go through this, but again, we will have someone on here to talk about this a little bit more, since this was just mentioned. There is a general admission, which is Saturday night investigation, 3 locations with all the people who are involved with the event. You can get individual, you can pay for multiple people, you can get a VIP, but this includes your hotel package. And so we will be investigating the hotel there that we're getting to stay in, and it's going to be the Bullock Hotel. Also the brothel there in Deadwood, the Fairmont Hotel. Those are the 3 investigation locations that we'll be investigating. And so you'll get the historical tour, meet and greet. Like I said, there are gallery readings, VIP packages, and then the overnight stay there at the Bullock Hotel. So again, you'll be seeing a lot more information over the next little bit regarding this, and I'll be having some different folks coming on to talk about Sacred Mountain Retreats, as well as talking about the actual event itself. So be sure to go check out that link, watch the show for updates, and keep track of the website. We'll have all that information on there. So I want to go ahead, and as you see, Sally is here. I can't have my show without Miss Sally wanting to pop on there. She likes to make her appearance known. But I want to go ahead and get to tonight's guest. If anyone has any questions or anything, please feel free to put them over in the comments. And again, if you don't mind, please try to put those in all caps so that as we're having our conversation, I don't end up missing your comments, and we'll get to them when we get to a quick break here in the conversation. And yes, Ronnie, she is quite the camera hog. I'm sure she will be back up here in a few minutes. She's gone to eat, but I'm sure she'll be back up here in a few minutes. So tonight's guest, she is a fellow Tennessean, or a native Tennessean, and a fellow Chattanooga native. Also, someone who loves all things horror, spooky, paranormal. And I'm just so excited to be connected with her. I'm going to go ahead and pull her on and let her. Yeah, I don't think I can do it justice. I'm going to let her introduce herself, but please help me in welcoming horror writer Miss Jessi Ann York. Hey, Jessi.
Hi. Ellie's here too.
Oh, they just have to. They won't allow you to not share the spotlight, right?
No, they have to support us.
Yes.
In their own little camera hog way, yeah.
Well, first off, thank you for taking the time to come on tonight and share your background, your story, and answer some questions for us.
Yeah, happy to. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So why don't you tell us about your background and how you got started with horror writing?
Oh, man. So I grew up in rural Normandy, Tennessee, which has like a population of less than 300. And so I grew up running around in creeks and rivers and dams and forests and caves. And so I was always drawn to being outdoors. And my parents couldn't get me out of the water, in the mud, playing with frogs and minnows and just anything out in the wild, beautiful Tennessee. And so I just was drawn to that macabre aspect of rural Normandy, Tennessee. And I ended up, like, my first short story that I ever had published by a professional rate indie publisher was called Places We Fear to Tread. And it was a story about the Normandy Dam.
Oh, wow.
So that was like my first little break. And since then, all my short stories that have been published throughout various anthologies. I have about 10 prorate ones now, which is really exciting. They all kind of follow Southern women growing up in the South. So.
Oh, wonderful. And that's one of the things we've had some other authors and such that have written about the granny women or the women of the Southern Appalachian region. And I find that absolutely fascinating because for me, that's how I got interested in the paranormal, was through hearing those old folklore and local stories. Did you have a lot of that in your area of Normandy, Tennessee?
Yes, I was quite the storyteller in my family, and I had my own little weird ghost story that I shared from a very young age that caught on with the rest of the family. And it was so potent that they started seeing this thing too.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's always been storytelling, and horror specifically has always just been a huge part of my life. And they still talk about this thing that I saw when I was little. It's like a family ghost story that's spread across
Oh,
Normandy and the surrounding cities. It's like, I think when people talk about me, my brothers, like that's the first thing they bring up is the family ghost story and my
would
imaginary friend.
would you be able to share that with us?
Yeah, that's another story that actually got published. It's more of a nonfiction essay.
Okay.
Terry Gates Media also did this one, and it's a collection of a bunch of different paranormal contact stories. And mine was put in here. But when I was 3 years old, my mom walked in on me talking to something like three, itty, itty bitty. And at first she wasn't weirded out because that's just what little kids do. And she said, well, tell me what your imaginary friend looks like. And I said, his name was Mitt, and he was really tall, and he was really pale, and he wore all black, and he had blood red eyes. And I said
Wow.
it like just very happy, jovial, like not weird. That's just my creepy little friend that was hanging out with me. Yeah, that's it right there. So, um, but my family naturally really freaked out about this, and they were like, "This is just not normal for a 3-year-old to see something this creepy." And the name was really weird too, Mitt. Like they couldn't understand why a child would pick something like that, and so. My aunt and uncle, they started telling the story too, because it was just so weird and bizarre that their little 3-year-old niece was seeing this creepy thing. And my aunt was at her office talking about it, and one of her coworkers, the story goes that one of her coworkers stopped her and said, how did you say your niece spells that? Mitt, that's a weird word. And I said, made me write it out before because it was so bizarre.
Hmm.
And my aunt was like, well, she spells it when we ask her to write it out. She spells it out MIT. And my aunt's coworker said, oh, well, that means with you, like with, the word with in German. So they thought that was really bizarre. And then my brothers, as the story spread and more people started seeing him, like my brothers have seen him out in the field by our house. My grandparents have seen him on both sides, mom and dad. My dad's seen him in the basement. My brothers started doing research, and we had apparently German settlers owned the property that my parents bought. So they thought maybe that had something to do with it, but just a lot of weird, connections and threads. And there was one night, because it's such a fun story, my brothers would bring people over and tell it. And sometimes they would try to antagonize this thing.
Oh.
And we have video footage. I wish I could find it. But there's a video of it pulling. The kid got like
Wow.
his name was Austin Fiala. He was so excited. He got like an online priest document. Like apparently you can get ordained online or something,
Okay.
hunting or something. And he was antagonizing it. And there's a video of it. You see his hair go up. So it's just like, it was an initial story that I told as a child that just kind of grew and spread, and people keep telling it. And I think it gave that thing more power because it just kept being told over and over again. So
Absolutely, almost developing its supernatural character in a way from what it what it was.
Yeah.
Um, if you all find access to that footage, I would love to have you back on
I
and
know.
highlight that footage if
I
you all
need to
ever find
find
it.
it.
Yes.
My brothers are watching. I think John has it. I need to get it from him. We were literally talking about it the other day because it's just such a story that our family shares over and over again. It's just a weird, I don't know, it brings us closer in a way, like that
Yeah.
strange ghost story.
Well, did you find as it doesn't sound like it really scared you or anything as a child?
No, I loved him. He was like my guardian. I didn't see him as scary, and that was the part that really freaked my parents and my aunt and uncle out. Was I just thought he was cool. He was my friend. Like he like looked after me. So I never thought he was weird or scary.
Wow.
No.
And did he have any scary attributes or anything, or did he just look like a normal person from what you saw and what the other folks around your area
Yeah,
saw?
he from what I remember, and the consistent thing that everyone says is he's just really, 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 really tall, and really, really pale, like almost vampiric looking.
Okay.
And so just the blood red eyes. And so I don't know. I always thought he was a demon, but he might be a ghost too. I don't know. Or the other thing, and I wrote about it in this. I think he's a tulpa.
And that makes perfect sense.
I think he's a tulpa, and a tulpa. The definition is a concept in mysticism and the paranormal of a being or object which is created through spiritual or mental powers. Modern practitioners use the term to refer to a type of willed imaginary friend, which practitioners consider to be a sentient or relatively autonomous being. And so I think just it's funny how it ties back to horror writing, because essentially through storytelling, he took on his own shape and power. So I think he's a tulpa.
I love that you say that because that's what I was actually that was gonna be my next question. I was gonna ask what you thought about tulpas and if that was you thought that was what that is. So that's really fascinating you say that. Do you think that that's something that we experience a lot more than not?
Yeah, I think you shape your own reality. And I really do. I think there's this blurred line, and I love this line so much. I play with it. So, my first degree was in psychology, and I worked at Moccasin Bin for a little bit as an intern. I
Wow.
was there for 3 months working with patients. And so, you know, when these patients are seeing these things, it is their reality. It's real to them. And so when someone tells me that they've seen a ghost or they've felt a presence, that is their reality. You know, like who am I to say that they didn't experience that? The same way I can't say those patients aren't experiencing the things that they experience. So I think your mind is everything around you. Everything we experience comes from our brain. And so if you're seeing and feeling those things, even if it's just you, that's very real to you. So yeah, it's a really interesting blurred line. And that's why I think tulpas are so interesting, is it's like a shared
Yes.
collective conscious, like building it together, a mass hysteria in a way.
Absolutely. And, you know, I've really been wanting to actually have this conversation for a long time about the psychology behind a lot of the things that we're experiencing here in the paranormal, especially when you take some of these different locations. And I know whenever I'm giving tours for investigators here at this location, I love sharing the stories that other people have experienced, but I also kind of want to withhold a little bit as well because I'm always wondering how much sharing other people's experiences shapes the experience that the investigator has whenever they come into a
Yeah.
location.
Yeah, it does. It totally does, because you're taking in that information and it's going to give you implicit bias. Yeah,
Yeah,
it does.
absolutely.
It's so funny how that works.
Yeah, and you know, it's kind of the same way like with Bobby Mackey's. You know, that location took on a whole reputation of being the portal to hell. And while there were a lot of things that were accurate that was being put out there on certain TV shows and that sort of thing, it's almost like there was a shift and they were talking about also some things that happened down the street, and those things started happening in that location, even though they had happened at other locations nearby. I mean, I believe spirits can travel, but I also feel like at times when we come in, I have to wonder too how much we're experiencing and how much the entities that are at a location take on from the stories that we're telling, how much of a character some of them may take on. I'm not sure if I'm explaining it
Yeah,
right.
they're
Making sense.
taking on your energy in a way. Like
Mhm.
you believing in it in a way would feed that energy and make it manifest more.
Exactly, almost like and two, if you've got a collective conscience where you have so many people that are in a location, I
Mhm.
guess, willing something to happen, I think that can kind of shift the activity, and new things can happen just because of that.
Yeah, one of my and I wrote a story about it. It's actually right here.
Oh,
It's another example of mass hysteria. It's a story in this anthology called Tarantism, and Tarantism was a recorded psychological phenomenon in 18th century Italy, where
okay.
people believed that they were possessed by wolf spiders and wolf spider bites. And you had these mass groups of people that would dance to remove the venom, and they would dance until they literally died.
Wow.
And it's recorded, like tons and tons of people would just start dancing and die. It's almost like flash mobs, right? But
Okay.
they,
Right.
they truly believed they had to dance to free that possession. And it just gave it, I mean, they did, they killed themselves dancing to death. So there's a reality there, right? Like you can say that's not real, but they perceived it and it was their reality. And they, to release that evil, they literally danced till they died. It's such a strange phenomenon.
And I would imagine, just because I've never heard about this until now. I would imagine that's sort of a similar way when it comes to like certain serial killers or certain people who take on like what they're doing. It's almost like a small sacrifice to save many, maybe.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like they're building their own character internally,
Mm-hmm.
like feeding this narrative in their head. Yeah, like once they do it once, it's easier each time. Yeah, because they're
Yeah.
summoning that energy within themselves.
Yeah, yeah. So that's fascinating. I've not heard of that till now.
Yeah, there's real psychological research related to trauma and adapting. We tell ourselves stories about ourselves to cope with trauma and change and grow. And they've found that just through writing samples,
Hmm.
people who write stories about themselves or they have these narratives in their head where I'm a character and I'm going through this and this is how I'm going to overcome. Um, you're more likely to see growth from that. It's literal manifestation because you put it at the front of your brain so much, you're more likely to follow through on those actions. Like if I tell myself every day, um, I'm going to be a star runner, and I
Hmm.
think about it every day that I'm this character and I'm going to be a star runner and I'm running and training every day, I'm going to have success from that because I'm literally putting it at the forefront and taking action with it. And so it's this line between, manifestation being this magical thing and it being a very real psychological phenomenon.
Do you think that that sounds a lot? You're in a very interesting genre with horror writing, and it's really interesting how that line does fall. But it's a very fine line between horror and the psychological
Yeah.
side of things. And I love what you're saying because it always seems like when it comes to horror, when you start really looking at the deep themes of a lot of horror writing or horror movies, there really is, when you start looking at it deeply, a psychological, I guess, almost fear, like what you're talking about
Yeah.
in that. And I could see where that could almost be a way of overcoming certain fears or traumas
Yes. Yeah.
through that.
Many of the horror writers I know, I'm part of the Horror Writers Association. If anyone in the audience is interested in horror writing or is just a fan of reading horror literature, please look up the HWA. It's just a wonderful group of people. And it's so funny because you would think horror writers would be like very creepy and weird. But when you get us in a room together, I mean, I went to my first HWA meeting and I can't get enough of it because they're just the kindest, nicest people. And it's because they're working that out of their system. They're nothing like romance writers or sci-fi writers. They're almost like, I don't know, they're just so happy and kind and rainbows. And it's just not what you would expect from horror writers. But I think it's because they work through those traumas. I personally write a lot about trauma in a lot of my writing, just like growing up. I'm 28, so I'm still processing a lot of like my teens, right? And I'm sure when I get into my 30s, I'll be processing things from my 20s. But yeah, a lot of horror writing is processing. Yeah,
Wow.
I love it. It's so cool.
Well, and I've just got to say, you're so very well spoken, and I would, you almost like a old soul in a way
Oh,
with
thank you.
the way
Yeah, thanks.
you speak and your ideas and stuff that you present. So, it
I appreciate that.
yes, yes, you're very welcome. But it kind of makes me think, kind of like what you're talking about with the Horror Writers Association. I've always heard like horror writers, heavy metal musicians, that sort of thing. They're always kind of a surprise when you start looking in because you see I've always heard that, like for instance, heavy metal musicians have like a higher IQ than a lot of others, and you wouldn't think that based on the type of and I'm sure it's probably the same way with horror because it's more than just blood and gore, that sort of thing.
Yeah, there are lots of different types of horror for sure. And blood and gore has an awesome place in the genre. Like we have the Splatterpunk Awards every year, and that's purely for like the goriest horror. But then we also have things like the Shirley Jackson Awards, which celebrate deep, thoughtful, psychological, political statements through horror. I'm thinking specifically of The Lottery, which
Hmm.
if you haven't read that story, a lot of us read it in high school.
Yes.
But just a quick refresher, it's the story about this small community of people, and every year they hold a lottery for who they're going to kill.
I
And
love that story.
yeah, it's stuck. And I mean, we still teach it in school, but that is, there's no blood and guts in that, and I think that's why it stuck with people, is it's so believable. And that was a very political story, and it still is very political. Just how we turn on the little guy, or we just pick one person to cast the stone at. But yeah, there's all sorts of different types of horror, but a lot of it is mostly, I think the best horror for me, I do really like the psychological stuff, like Shirley Jackson's The Lottery.
Those are the ones that just seem to, like, at least for me, seem to really stick with you whenever you either read them or watch them. They stick with you for days, and your mind is
You
just kinda
know?
sitting there when you're not doing something, just thinking about it
Yeah.
and processing it. That was actually gonna be my next question, what your favorite style of horror was, and is that what a lot of your short stories are about, or is it a variety?
Yeah, childhood trauma is a lot of it. A lot of it's usually a young female Southern protagonist learning about herself and her sexuality, and the confusion that comes with that,
Okay.
which can be horrifying, right?
Right. Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
so I really I love Mike Flanagan, The Haunting of
Mm,
Hill House. That's a great example of the
yes.
type of horror that I'd love to tap into, because he's basically showing the effects of the childhood trauma on the adults. Like, you see the adults after they've grown up and they've left the haunted house, but it's all about what that did to them and the impact it had on them. Uh, and I just love stuff like that. I love the emotional core to it. Yeah, highly recommend Mike Flanagan and The Haunting of Hill House. That's also Shirley
Oh,
Jackson. So I have a theme. I can't get over Shirley Jackson. She's my
I
favorite.
love it. I love it. So let's talk about some more. You've already mentioned a few of your short stories. What is probably one of your favorites that you've written to date so far?
Oh, my favorite. That's a hard one.
Like
I
asking you to pick your favorite child.
well, it's almost like I'm really critical too, so I'm afraid I'm going to talk about it and be like, oh, it's not that good. And there's this thing that I know that's wrong with it. I have it over here. Let's see, I should have these next to me. I have them in the background. This is my big pile. Okay. So the most recent thing I had published was it's a anthology collection hybrid, which is really cool. Because traditionally in an anthology, it's a bunch of different writers with one story each. And so a collection is just short stories by one writer. And so Cemetery Gates Media did this cool thing where it's a hybrid. So there's only 4 writers. So it still technically counts as an anthology, but we each get our own mini section. So I have 4 stories in here instead of 1. And so you get like a nice little taste. But there's a story in here called dimorphism. And dimorphism is a term for different animals of different sexes having different features. So like female ducks look different from male ducks, and sometimes female animals are larger than male animals. And so I think I'm proud of this story just because it's the most recent one I wrote. And so it's exploring a lot of really weird things with sexuality and being a woman. And so the whole point of the story is this girl gets left behind with these tarantulas. Her ex is not her ex, sorry, he becomes her ex, but he's a researcher at a college, and he's just left her with them. He doesn't want to deal with them. And so she's stuck in the house looking after these spiders that he's engineered to have special hairs. And they're pricking her. And she's slowly losing her mind, right? Because these hairs are pricking her and she's itching at it. It's just driving her crazy. And she starts developing the urge to eat these spiders. And later her husband, who's left her with these things. And the reason I wrote it is because I love this idea of traditionally, you know, we say that nature is favored towards the masculine. But when you look at a lot of animals like snakes and spiders, the female is usually bigger and she usually eats her male partner.
That's right.
And there's this weird, wicked scariness to that, and that being in you. Because I had an ex one time, it really stuck with me. He said something like, he cheated on me, right? And so he justified it saying that that's just what men do. So that's just nature. That's just nature. I have to, like, nature's telling me to, you know, that was his justification. And it always made me laugh because it's like, well, then if I listened to my natural urge, it would be to eat you alive.
I love it.
Well, you can't
love it.
Excuse, right?
Right.
You don't use that excuse. And so that's what that story is about, is this weird underlying feminine urge to devour the mate as we see in nature, and how weird and creepy that is.
But when you say that, there is actually because like praying mantises, don't they do that?
Yeah. That's one of the sections of the story. She's growing up and remembering seeing praying mantises like eating their mates,
snapping their head off,
eating their eyes out. Yeah. And it's so gruesome and brutal. And I wrote that because when I was little, that actually happened to me. I found some praying mantises in my backyard when I was really young, and I didn't understand. And I was just so happy and excited, right? Because they were attached to each other, and I didn't know what that meant. I just thought it was cool. I thought they were hugging each other. And so I took them to show and tell. Sorry, my southern accent just really came out. I took them to show and tell, and we came back from recess, and she was eating him alive. And my mom loves telling the story. I just called her sobbing and crying. And I was like, why? Why would she? Her name was Blaze, and the male was Lucky. And I just called her screaming and crying. Like, I think I was like in first grade. And I was like, why would she do that? Why would she eat him? They were in love. And so just that childhood trauma, right, of not understanding that. There's also another memory, and it's not a personal memory, but my friend talked about it. A lot of women have memories of this growing up. It's really weird. But chickens will eat their own eggs if they get hungry.
Really?
Yeah. if you're not giving them the right nutrition, they will literally devour their own eggs. And there's just something horrifying about that, right? So she has childhood trauma of seeing her chickens do that. Yeah, so I think it's the story I'm most proud of just because it's really weird and really bizarre, and it's dealing with all these uncomfortable things that we observe in nature. But yeah, that always cracked me up that I had that ex that said, that's nature. I'm supposed to cheat on you. And I'm like, well, if it was nature, I'd be eating you. So let's not go that way. I don't think you want that to be how it works.
Such a great comeback. I love that.
Yeah, so just really funny.
I love that. And let's see. Alex says, I have seasons of Severance on my TBR, and the
Hey,
description of
Alex.
dimorphism just moved it up on my list.
Yeah. It's a weird story about eating weird things.
It's kind of funny you say that because I used to catch, I don't know if they call the same thing everywhere, but here, the little katydids, the little green.
Yeah.
Yes. And so we get a lot of them around here. And I had caught several. And my first experience, I had taken, because I was in Girl Scouts, and I learned to make like a little case out of a Morton salt container. And so I had like 4 of them in there. And I remember going out the next day, and I saw one laying in the bottom, and they were kind of crawling on the sides there. And I thought it was sleeping, and I reached down to pick it up. And when I reached in, a couple of them kind of got on my arms, because they got those sticky legs.
Yeah.
And when I picked it up, they had eaten the other half side of the katydid. And I was mortified by it. And I ended up, now I'm not afraid of bugs or really very much, but for the longest time, I did not like those katydids because they had eaten that other one and they were crawling all over my arm, and it was a horrifying experience.
Yeah, it is. It's scary. Like, you never forget those moments. They stay with you forever.
Absolutely. So, so we'll get back into your books here in a few minutes, but I love the fact that you're a fellow Chattanoogan.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited about that. And just before the show, we were kind of talking about that area and just some of the creepy, cool things that's in the area that people can do, people can learn about. And we kind of started talking about one that you and I both have a very similar interest in, and that's underground Chattanooga.
Oh, I know. I really want to see it someday. Have you seen it yet?
I've not seen it yet, but my first job that I worked at there was at an accounting firm in downtown Chattanooga, off of Market Street. And one of the places, my job at the time, I worked part in marketing and part as their file runner. And so I had to take files down. They called it, the area was this underground storage area that was beneath one of the restaurants, and one of the walls was open and you could see back through there. And I can't tell you how many days I actually thought about when I would go to take stuff down to the storage unit, being like, oh, I'm going to work down here and crawl back through the wall, because it went down to some area. I can only assume possibly down into underground Chattanooga, because I know that there are like several different places that has access underneath their buildings. And I wish I had done that, before I had left that job, because they say there's all these old storefronts that it's kind of like they just up and left and built the city up around it.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of it. Ew, it's so creepy. I really want. They can't do tours, right? Because it's really dangerous. But that's my dream one day, is to get a chance to see it. Because it's still down there, and it just looks literally like an underground city. You can see all the storefronts still there intact.
Yeah, and so if people don't know about underground Chattanooga, it was during the early 1900s when they had the massive flood there, or late 1800s. I can't remember when they. Okay, Shelly, when they had the major floods there in Chattanooga, and so to kind of kind of prevent it from flooding so bad, they ended up just building the city up.
Wow.
Unless I'm wrong on the years on that, because I've seen several pictures where they're up on Lookout Mountain, sitting there overlooking the area, and just the entire area of downtown is just completely flooded.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool because you can walk downtown, and certain buildings you can look over and you can actually see the top arches of some of the windows where they've built the street up.
Yeah. It's super
So,
weird.
yeah. Maybe one day they will be able to do tours, or at least of a section of it. That'd be cool to be able to just take you down and see a section of it.
Yeah, just a peek. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So do you have any more paranormal experiences or anything that you've experienced over the years that have kind of inspired your writing or love for horror?
Man, my other one big thing, and I've written 2 stories about it, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about the line between psychology, the paranormal. Her eyes are beautiful. Sorry, I love her looking around.
Well, it's
She's like a model.
it's always weird. It's like she's seeing something.
I was wondering what she was looking at. Yeah.
so I'm not surprised here if something doesn't catch her attention.
Yeah.
Anyways, please go on.
Yeah. But anyways, it blurs that line between psychology, perception, and the paranormal. But I have really bad hypnagogic hallucinations. And so it's a type of night terror where you wake up and see things. And it's different from sleep paralysis because sleep paralysis, you can't move. You're locked up and you see things. I can actually move and talk and hit things, which is not fun for the people in the room. I hate it when it happens. I had it happen to a friend. I was staying with her, and she said that I was very lucky that she didn't shoot me because she sleeps with a gun next to her bed. But I woke up and she was not her. She was this white, melty thing, and she was screaming at me. And I thought I was dreaming, and I stood up. And what I've done is I have these things so many times now. Like my initial reaction is I'll go, get away, get away, get away. And so I stood up and started screaming that at her in the corner of the room. And so from her perception, right, she wakes up and she just sees me like in the corner of the room. And she started crying. It scared her so bad. Like it was, we laughed about it the next day, but in that moment it was.
Sure.
Well, I started crying, and I was still slapping at the air, and thank goodness she wasn't near me. But I slapped and screamed, and then I got back in bed next to her, laid down, and then I looked up, and that was when it hit me. I was like, that really happened, didn't it? And she said, yes, it really happened. And she was her again. But they're just really bad. I think a lot of people have them. They just don't talk about them, right? Because they're afraid they're going to think they're being, something's really wrong. But I think it's a normal thing the human brain does, especially if you're anxious. I do have like a mild anxiety disorder. And so like my night terrors are how they manifest. And the more stressed I am, the more likely I am to see things like that at night. But yeah, I know what they are now. So it's really bad in the moment. Like my heart will lock up and I'll be sweating, and it's usually like bugs in the bed or someone at the corner of the bed. But once it's over, I know it's not real and I'm fine. But for her, if I stay with her now, I sleep on the couch. We don't share a bed anymore. So it was awful. And she said that I was very lucky that she didn't shoot me.
Yeah. And I would imagine if there are more people that have those, that's probably hard for some people because it sounds real intense. And so I would imagine it's really hard to know the difference in reality, as well as maybe some type of spiritual visitor or an encounter. I would imagine that would be really challenging to know the difference.
Yeah. And who knows, like maybe these things I'm seeing are real people, but I'd like to think they're not, because I see them a lot. There are usually a lot of people standing around my bed, and I don't want to believe that. So we're going to say that it is a hallucination. So, but yeah, it's just the brain between sleep and waking, it will see things. And I can taste things sometimes, and I can hear things. Sometimes they'll say my name, and I've actually felt them touch me before.
Wow.
The touching is very rare, but when it happens, it's absolutely horrifying.
Oh, I would imagine. Do you have on a regular basis, do you have really vivid dreams?
When I am very anxious and not working out, that's when they get really bad. And I figured that out early on. I have to work out or they come for me. I have to get that extra energy out. Um,
And that's just good advice all around, I think. Good way to deal with stress.
Yeah, it's definitely tied to like very mild anxiety. And so if I'm having a stressful work week or there's a big event coming up and I haven't been working out and getting excess energy out, that's usually when I see and hear those things. And it's usually very brief. It happens for a second. It's really horrifying in the moment, and then I get over it. I think it's much worse for the person in the room with me, which makes me really sad because I hate that I scared my friend like that.
Right.
So
do you think, just kind of going off that theory and talking about the excess energy and everything, let's talk about it kind of from that standpoint as well as a psychological standpoint.
yeah.
So when a person is going to investigate a
Mm,
different location, and they come in and say they're extra stressed and they've not done the things they need to do to center and ground themselves, and they've got all this excess energy, do you believe that that plays an influence on the spirits at the location and maybe the type of activity that people would get?
that is so interesting because once again, it's that line, and they flow together so well. But let's say, I would imagine, like, let's say you're doing an investigation and let's say you're dehydrated.
Mhm.
From a psychological standpoint, if you've been working really hard and you're super stressed and you have not been drinking water and eating and taking care of yourself, you are going to probably see and hear things, right? You're more
Mhm.
stressed, your vision's going to be dotted depending on how hungry and thirsty you are. But at the same time, from the paranormal standpoint, you could make the argument from that line of thinking that you're weaker
Mhm.
spiritually. And so the entity has an easier time than manifesting itself around you. So it's interesting. They play together, right?
Mhm.
That line, yeah, you can, they both complement each other in a really deep way.
I agree, and I agree with Randy as well. I think it leaves you kind of wide open if you're not in a good place when you're going into these areas.
Mhm.
Is there a certain, so I've always heard the body and the mind and stuff reacts a certain way whenever we do experience certain things that are unexpected. And I'm not really talking about the pareidolia aspect of things,
Mhm.
like trying to make something out of something that's not there. But when we do experience something, like, say, for instance, a disembodied voice that we're not expecting,
Yes.
or a entity that manifests in front of us, and we see that,
Mhm.
is there a certain way that the mind reacts, as in, like, almost like a paralysis sort of way, like you hear the statement "scared stiff,"
Yes.
or is there a way that the body reacts whenever we experience certain unexpected things like that?
Oh yeah. Well, I can tell you from the things I see at night, like I'm worried it's going to give me a stroke one day, but my whole heart will just, and
Okay.
I'll feel like it's horrifying in the moment. And my blood pressure is probably definitely rising. But yeah, I would say I'm sure there's things happening up here too, but even physically, like your muscles are going to lock up. You might even be sore the next day, like a car crash, right? Like if you're that scared and from something and you're
Mhm.
locking up in fear, you're going to feel that the next day. Um, so yeah, yeah, it's definitely doing something to your body.
Well, that's what I wondered sometimes, if if it's kind of hard to determine what, like when we're in a location like this, because for the most part, we're pretty, when we know we're going to a location to investigate or go somewhere where there's potential activity, I know that, a lot of people, of course, we're excited about it because this is
Yeah.
why we're here to investigate. But I've wondered sometimes with the way the body reacts when we experience certain things, if we're experiencing an entity or something supernatural, or if it's our body reacting a certain way. Um, when we go and do the Estes method, we go into a sensory deprived state
Ooh.
by using the noise canceling headphones and the blindfold. Once you're in that state where you can't feel and see and do things, other things start to get even more heightened. And
Mhm.
so I've always been interested in it from a psychological point of view with what we're experiencing. Is it a true experience, or what are we bringing in, I guess, psychologically that we're experiencing? I'm not sure if I'm asking that question very
Oh, I
clear.
know what you're saying. Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. I think that's the beauty of it is it is your perception.
Hmm.
So if that's your reality, if you're, depriving your senses and you're opening up yourself for this and you experience this and that's how it is to you in that moment, then that's your reality. Like
Hmm.
I'm not going to take that away from anyone. If that's what if you feel like you made contact with something, then
Hmm.
from your perception you did. That's the experience you had. And
Hmm.
people can't take that away from you. You can't impose it on someone else, right?
Right.
Like you felt this, and so someone else is going to feel it, and
Hmm.
but if that's your experience and you had that, no one can take that away from you. That's your brain telling you that you're sensing it. And so whereas my perception, I might rationalize it,
Hmm.
you know, but I don't know. And then there's, like I said, I'm telling myself that these things I'm seeing at night aren't real because I don't want to consider what that would mean if they were. So that's the reality I'm choosing to live in. Um, but I don't know. It's such a beautiful line, and I don't want to say there's always a rational explanation. And so I would say if you're having an experience like that, and you truly believe that you felt that, I don't think anyone can take that away from you. Like any
Hmm.
rational psychological explanation. I have friends who also have psych backgrounds. It's funny how we find each other because we just all kind of love all this stuff, and they're also
Hmm.
into spooky stuff too, right? Because it's connected. Um,
Uh-huh.
but they're very rational, scientific people, and they're like, "Oh, I don't believe in this stuff." But one time I was in a graveyard and I heard someone whisper over my ear, and that was real.
Hmm.
And they will say, I know that wasn't real, but it was real. And that's the only way you can explain it. Like that was
Right.
their experience. And so when my brothers asked me if Mitt was real, like going back to that very first discussion we had, he was real when I was a child. My
Hmm.
perception as a child, he was real. And now as an adult, I can look back and rationalize it. But in that moment, little like that was real to me.
Well, I mean, we see kids come in, there's a reason we don't allow kids to do the paranormal investigations, but we have kids on some of our flashlight tours, and we always give a K2 meter,
Mm,
which, you know, anyone, I mean, I'm sure most people are familiar with the K2 meter, but reads electromagnetic frequency energy, also used by electricians to find open conduits and that sort of thing. Um, but I have seen in certain areas here at the jail, kids get readings off of those K2 meters
mm,
and them react the meters react in ways I've never seen them react with myself or other adults that have been doing this for years. Why do you think that children experience more unexplained activity than adults?
I think that goes back to tulpas. Like they're giving it power. It is real to them, and you can say it's not real, but to them
Mhm.
it's real. And so there's that element of manifestation again. if they believe it, they're more likely to experience it.
Do you think that they do see things, now, because obviously they've got a pure mind, and, and of course we get to a point where when we get older, we're like, okay, maybe there's a logical explanation. Maybe there truly is. Maybe we just tell ourselves that so we sleep better at night.
Yeah.
But as far as experiencing things, do you think that being open, whether it be a child who is pure and open, or an adult that may be a little more open, or maybe one that's even got some mental challenges that cause them to be more childlike, so maybe they're more open?
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe personally that is trying to think of how to ask it. Do you believe that is that they are experiencing more and it's maybe feeding off that, or do you believe that that's just more of just a personal interpretation of something that we could truly explain?
I think my answer would be, going back to the physical, like you said, whether it's real or not, they are having a physical reaction to it, and that is real.
I know that's a hard question.
I know. I don't think there is I know that what they are feeling and the responses to their body, though, that is real.
Mm-hmm.
Like back, if you look at ancient exorcisms, they would perform these exorcisms and these people would get better. And the reaction they had, like, you can't deny that their body got better. That is real fact, that they healed. Mm-hmm. So whether it's real or not, we know that there's a physiological reaction, and whether it's psychological or the paranormal, that is real, and that's their perception, because what they're experiencing is their reality. There was a really interesting, I think it's called semantic. I wish I could remember, but a long time ago, it doesn't show up anymore, but there were symptoms, psychological disorders where you wouldn't be able to move your arm or your leg.
Okay.
From trauma. And it was before we had talk therapy, back when people weren't, back before Freud and therapy, when people talked about their emotions. And you would have these people, I wish I could remember the name of the disorder. I'm going to have to look it up after this. But their locked up feelings were so intense, they literally wouldn't be able to move parts of their body. And then they would talk and do talk therapy and be released. But that perception in their brain, even though nothing had happened to this arm, that reality of whatever they experienced was so true they couldn't move it. So the physiological is real. So you can't deny that whatever this is seeing, your reality is your reality, So if that child believes they're seeing something, and their body is going to react in the way that it is reality to them. It may not be reality to you and me or a skeptic, but if they are experiencing it, the effect it's going to have on their body is real, whether it's positive or negative.
Right. And well, I think that was what was so fascinating to me. And I go back to a tour that we had that had 2 young kids on. I think they were 8 and 10. And that's kind of a prime age whenever we've found people experiencing anything from like the 3 to 8-year-old type age, and then jumps again around like the puberty age. Yeah. And so of course, because at that point there's all these hormones and all these different energies that are affecting on the kid. But I go back to this tour, and the one of the little girl was carrying the K2 meter, and she was having some really interesting experiences. And when she would ask certain questions, the K2 meter has a ray of lights on it going from light green to bright red. Yeah. And most of the time they sort of just kind of either will light 1 or 2 lights up, or they'll light all the way up to red and then off real quick. It's just kind of a
Yeah.
quick. I've never seen a K2 meter when this kid she had one in each hand sitting on a cell bunk. And she said, this one is yes, this one is no. And she started asking questions. And that K2 meter, it was like it would fan from green to red very slow and stay on and then fan off. I've never seen a K2 do that in response to questions. And they were legit lighting up yes and no. And
Yeah.
so for me, whenever you talk about a personal experience, those are kind of hard to qualify sometimes because, again, like you said, unless you can see the cold chills on somebody's arm or
Yeah.
unless you physically see what they see, it's just truly a personal experience. But for this child to talk about what she's experiencing and to literally see the meters reacting in a way that I have never seen them react.
And you're experiencing it with her. Yeah.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
was standing there with my mouth wide open. And to me, it really kind of validated that kids, whenever a kid says they have an imaginary friend, you kind of need to take note of that because they don't know any different.
Yeah, it's real to them.
Yeah, it's very real. I mean, they're very literal.
Yeah.
And so I think it's something we pay attention to, that they just may be truly experiencing something. Why, whether it's because they're pure or what have you, I don't know, but it's really pretty amazing.
Yeah. I'd say what she experienced was real. Like, I think
Yeah.
like you saw it, it's real. Yeah.
And as John says, you brought
That's my
Mitt
brother.
into the house.
Yeah.
And Ronnie says, Miss York, I appreciate the fact that you're not one-dimensional. Very enlightening.
I just think it's so sad. Like you can't deny, I don't know, you can't deny someone's experience. I think that's what makes me sad is like there's nothing wrong with being skeptical, but I don't think that you can tell someone that what they experienced wasn't real.
Yeah.
If they're not trying to impose it on you, but yeah, I mean, you can't take away that experience from someone. If they felt that and it was real to them, then it was real to them and it was real.
Well, and I love talking to someone that has the knowledge from a psychological perspective, because I feel like a lot of that, if someone has a scientific or a psychological background, a lot of the time they can have explanations for some of the things that we're experiencing, or be able to explain, why we react the way we do to certain things. So it's been really fresh and enlightening to discuss that with you. So thank you for answering those questions that myself and some of the folks here in the chat room have had.
I'm definitely no expert. I do want to say I just have a bachelor's degree. That's like very tiny in the sea of psychological experience. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. That's all just my opinion.
Well, but I think that coming at it from that perspective, it sounds like that really marries very well with your creative writing, especially in the horror genre.
I think I'm very sympathetic towards it because, while I was working at Marcus and Bend, I worked with patients who had schizophrenia, bipolar, and they were considered psychotic. And so when we say someone is psychotic, it means that they are having a break from our reality. They are seeing things and believing things and talking to things, and it just that we are not experiencing. It is just their experience. But what I was taught, and it really stuck with me, is it's still their experience, and you can't deny that they're having it. You would never tell a patient that it's not real because it's real to them. Like when they are seeing and feeling and hearing these things, it's not our reality, but it's there and it's very real to them. And the stress it's causing them and the pain that it's causing them is very real. So I have a deep respect for no one can take your experience away from you. You can't impose your experience on someone else. Like that's not okay. But when they experience those things, it's real to them. That's the reality.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you say it that way because, that's that's the way I've always felt when you're talking to someone, whether it be talking about the paranormal or even talking to someone about a misunderstanding
Yeah.
that someone has that you've had between yourself and somebody else.
Yeah.
The reality is the way I perceive something and the way you perceive something, that's our own true realities, and the
Mhm.
way we react to that, um, that's our reality. Whether the way you react to something I see as irrational or not, it doesn't matter. That's your reality. And I think we have to stop and look at that when just dealing with people in general, regardless of the experience that they've experienced, whether it be, like I said, paranormal or even like a misunderstanding between people.
Yeah. When you think about it, we're all truly everything we're hearing, smelling, it is all the brain. It is all our senses. And we are just this brain taking in coding. And so we'll never truly share the same experience. And there's something really beautiful about that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But there's still also this collective unconscious, like we talked about earlier, where we have these little moments where we do connect and we experience these weird threads drawing us together. So I don't know. But yeah, it's really there's never a nice neat answer. I don't want there to be one. I think if someone says they do
Ah.
have a solid concrete answer, there's something not right there. That's just not how the world works.
Absolutely. I love that. So let's talk about a little bit of the things that you've got coming up and the best way
Yeah.
that people can find you and follow you, because I've got to say, you truly have, and let me get this pulled up over here. You truly have a beautiful website.
Oh, thank you.
And I love, I've been going through it here, looking at your publications and press events and stuff. I know I've got a lot of reading to catch up on, but what is the best way for people to find out more about your writings and really just find out more about what you do?
Yeah, I have 10 professional rate stories out, and I'm hoping that's just the beginning for me. I'm kind of like I'm still a baby. I just got my agent last year. It'll be 1 year in August, and as soon as she signed me, we started working on a novel together.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
and it's funny that we're doing this. It's actually the draft is supposed to be done at the end of this month. And I'm going to get that submitted to her. But if you want to follow me on that journey and see what comes of that, I'm on Twitter, Instagram. I just made my Facebook page public. So wherever you like to be on those platforms, I'm usually there. I did get TikTok. I don't like TikTok. I'm just on there because that's what you're supposed to do.
You sound like me.
Yeah, I hate TikTok.
Oh, apparently
On TikTok if you're on TikTok.
I saw where TikTok surpassed, and this has been about a year ago, but TikTok surpassed Google in searches as far
Yes.
as people searching things to do. And I want to so bad, but I'm like you. It's just like
Or it's one more thing to do. It's one more
it
thing.
is.
Yeah.
It is, and it's a great resource, but oh my gosh, I mean, I guess I'm hoping that something else will come along so I can be one of the first people to jump on that because I'm always late jumping on stuff.
Well, I know they
And
just made threads too with Facebook, and I told myself, I said, Jess, you're not allowed to dig into that until you're done with the novel. Like I forbid myself from creating a Threads account. But I'm probably going to regret it because I didn't jump on the train. But I was like, you need to write, just focus on the writing. But yeah, if you're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, I'm primarily most active there. If you're on Instagram, you're going to see my cosplay stuff, actually on Twitter too. So I'm a true Halloween person. When I'm not writing, I'm dressing up as fun characters. So it's Halloween all year long.
I love it. And is all of that under Jessi Ann York?
Yes, Jessi Ann York. It's all under the same, and it's just one word.
Okay. And I'm putting all of this in the chat so that when people can go back and we've got a couple of your books on there and we've got your website on there. We've also got them in the show notes, but I'm trying to put all of this on here so that when people go back and look through, they can have quick links to click on. So So definitely anybody that's watching here, if you don't follow Jessi Ann York already, you can do that on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Go check out her website because she makes it really, really easy to lose an evening reading. With the quick click links on there. It truly is as Dee Dee from Haunted Hour podcast says, it truly is a beautiful collection there.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So I also noticed on here you've got some events coming up.
I do. Yeah, Dragon Con is the next one. I'm still waiting to get my list of panels. That's my absolute favorite con. I love the horror track. Shout out to Derek, who does a great job leading that and organizing all the panels. But yeah, when I'm not talking about writing, I will be dressing up as some anime character.
Nice.
That's the dichotomy of me. So if you're into that kind of stuff, please come find me. I love talking about spooky stuff and costumes. Like I said, it's Halloween all year long for me.
Well, I absolutely love it, and I enjoy following you online, and am just so pleased that Kathy connected us.
I know. I love Kathy so much. I'm so glad. Yeah, we need to hang out outside of this, please.
Yes, please. Let's do that. And hopefully I'll see you at some of the conventions. You ought to make your way down to the Deep South Paracomic-Con that
I saw that. That was
talking
you were
about.
talking about them earlier, and I was like, I need to write down all of these and go to these too because I love conventions. I love the con scene. So yeah, I was excited to learn about these new ones I've never heard of.
Yeah, and this one is really cool. This is the second year of the Deep South Paracomic-Con in Ozark, Alabama. Last year it was in I forget. It was there in another town there in Alabama, but and I'm totally blanking on it on where it was, but it's in Ozark this year, and it's supposed to be bigger and better, and so they've got panels as well there um, different speakers, and then in lots of different booths, lots of folks dressed up last year. So it's the 19th and 20th there of August. So you should definitely come in and check that out.
Yes, it sounds like fun. I have a lot of friends who would want to come with me, so maybe we'll bring like a whole spooky crew.
There you go. And I know there's some other ones that's coming up, but do you have a date as to when you said your book was coming out, or that you're working on?
So that's the fun thing about publishing, right? Is just because I have an agent and just because I finished the book, that doesn't mean it'll get published. We still have to shop it. So like I said, I am in the baby stages of my career. So if you want to follow me on that journey, in the meantime, I'm publishing short stories, which I think short stories are invaluable and wonderful. Yes. I wouldn't have an agent without my short stories. That's how she found me first. I know a lot of people, when they think reading, they think novels, but short stories are beautiful. I have Tarantism is free to read on my site right now. That one was published publicly online, but everything else is in a bunch of different anthologies and collections. But the cool thing is when you pick up those anthologies and collections, you're not just getting me, you're getting tons of other really wonderful people in the horror community. And it's such a fun rabbit hole to go down because there's so many of us, and it's just a great time. If you're a reader, if you're a writer, please look at the Horror Writers Association. That is my family. They've been so good to me. I would love to introduce you to them. You know, it's just a wonderful group of spooky writers. We're family. So yeah.
Maybe we can do another show and have you as well as several other representatives from the Horror Writers Association
they would love that. Yeah, we have a chapter in Georgia. And so if you want the Atlanta chapter to come on, they would love that. It's funny. I actually shared this link with all of them earlier.
Oh, nice.
Some of them are watching it, but yeah, they would love that. It would be fun. It's a good group of people. So
we'll do our own little panel right here.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great conversation. have a bunch of horror riders on. So I'll definitely get with you and we'll
Please
try
do.
to definitely set that up. So again, we've got that information there in the show notes. Guys, go and check that out, because I know a lot of you on here are content creators as well. And so, as Jessi said, going in, checking out these books that have multiple writers in them, you're getting a lot of different stories in. Go on, support these content creators, because without you guys going on and liking, sharing, and helping to get the word out, it really is tough to kind of navigate those deep waters, because there's a lot of people out there, and we want to do what we can to get the word out for these people who spend their time and their effort to put this great content out. So go on, check out Jessi on her pages, and check out these other folks who are writers as well. Alex says, you and other HWA folks are wearing me down.
We're everywhere. There's no escape. That's the other thing. Once you join in, you can't get out, because we're everywhere.
That's all part of the whole horror thing, right?
Yeah, one of us. Yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much for coming on with me tonight. And if you'll stick around for a few minutes, I'm going to kind of close everything out.
Absolutely.
And we'll chat for just a few minutes after the show here.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you again.
No, thank you. This was so much fun.
Well, I'll talk to you here shortly.
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, again, thank you all so much for taking the time tonight to watch the show and to add your very nice comments and your questions. It's been a lot of fun. Again, go on, check out the links that we've got posted in the show notes, as well as what we've posted there in the comments, and check out some of Jessi's stories. Also, like I said, don't forget, we do have the Deep South Paracomic-Con that's coming up August 19th and 20th, and it's going to be in Ozark, Alabama. I don't know my speaking time just yet, but last year it was a great event with great people. I know it's even bigger and better this year, so definitely want to check that out. And then also the Spirits of Deadwood paranormal event that's going to be September 29th and 30th. Again, there are 3 locations that will be investigating, and all of the different pricing packages does include the investigation as well as your overnight stay. And so again, keep watching for the different folks that we're going to have on the show, and we'll be talking more about that, as well as talking about Sacred Mountain Retreat and the great things that they do for our military veterans. I just want to also make sure to mention, let me pull up my calendar here, because again, it's been a very, very busy month. Next month, very excited, I will have Mr. KD Stafford on. That's going to be on July 27th. We'll be wrapping up the month with him, and we're going to be talking about, he is this, if you've not heard of KD, which I'm sure most of you have, we will be talking about I'm at a loss of words tonight. It's been a long week. We'll be talking about his equipment. He is an equipment creator. And so we're going to be talking about that, talking about his investigations. We'll also be talking about, I got to meet him in person there at the Haygood Mill Paracon that was at the start of the year. And so we're going to be talking about that, as well as he's going to be part of the Spirits of Deadwood event that's coming up. So we'll be talking about that as well. But until then, again, thank you all so much for spending time here with me this evening. That is, time is one of our most valuable gifts, and I really appreciate you guys spending it with us tonight. And so until next week, keep an eye on the page, where we'll be having more information about the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash that we were just at, posting pictures and some information on that Paracon, and when we will have Miss Pamela Berry on again to talk about the wrap up the event and how that went. So until then, I hope you all have a wonderful week, and we will talk to you very soon. Take care.